right, glad to see everybody still wide awake and excited to have these conversations. We'll ask you to all head back to your seats. Okay. So for our final panel, we'll be discussing something that all Head Start programs know the value of, which is partnerships. Once again, I'm pleased to welcome Wassy Tesfa from Pacific Clinics and Marvin Hogan from Friends of Children of Mississippi. They're joined by two speakers whose 2Gen efforts start from points outside of early childhood, but offer tools and partnership strategies to enhance outcomes for whole families. And unfortunately, Elise Rosenblum is in Boston, and if you've heard of Boston right now, it is maybe not the place you want to be traveling in and out of. So sadly, she's not with us, but we will find another opportunity to share some of her work with you. And you do have a handout about Year Up in your folders, which you can take a look at later, that she was hoping to share. For those folks who are up here, we have Kate Griffin, who is the Corporation for Enterprise Development's Director of Director of, sorry, I couldn't see what the F was in CFED for a second, and I was like, anyway. She's with the Corporation for Enterprise Development as the Director of Savings and Financial Capability, where she oversees their work in the area of matched savings accounts that enable low-income children, adults, and families to build assets and other strategies that help families to strengthen their financial capability. She has been leading CFED's work to scale asset-building strategies within other large systems, such as TANF, Head Start, child welfare, child support, public health, and other social services. And she spent her entire career focused on financial inclusion and helping low-income families build and manage wealth. Prior to CFED, Kate worked internationally in the microfinance field, providing technical assistance to organizations in 12 countries in Asia, Africa, and Eastern Europe, and helping to expand savings practices among financial institutions focused on serving low-income households. Dr. Autumn Green, at the end, is a trained sociologist serving as the founding director of the Center for Residential Student Parent Programs, director of the Keys to Degrees National Replication Program, and assistant professor of sociology at Endicott College in Beverly, Massachusetts. And we offer her our condolences on Massachusetts. Dr. Green is an expert in the areas of poverty, family, and social policy, higher education access and success for non-traditional students and student parents, and 2-generation anti-poverty strategies. Her work includes research on 2-generation supports for student parents and replication of these efforts. Autumn is also part of the Higher Education Alliance of Advocates for Students with Children and is a member of the Aspen Institute's Ascend Network. We'll begin with Autumn.
All right, so I thought that I would use my time to talk about partnerships to actually tell you a little bit about the stories of how we created partnerships at Endicott College that moved us from a small program serving 10 families on the North Shore of Boston to a research center that's serving thousands of families across the United States. And simultaneously, I was hoping, because pictures are worth 1,000 words, I wanted to also tell you a story in pictures. And so as I'm talking and telling you the story in words, I was also going to have some pictures of the families in our programs across, and the families represent the different programs that I'm going to be talking about. So the story begins with the founding of the single parent program at Endicott College in 1993. And Endicott College's president, Dick Wiley, who is also an Ascend Fellow with the Aspen Institute, is frequently known for visiting with students. He's known as the student-centered president. And one of the things that he does is he meets with families when they come for their admissions visits to the college. And so on this particular day in 1993, he walked down the stairs and was meeting with the families, and there's a young woman there with an infant in her arms. And her father is with her, and he's grumbling. He goes, "I don't even know why we're here. This is a complete waste of time. She can't go to college. She has a baby." And it really made him start to think about, well, what could I do for young single parents, to make college a possibility for them, to be able to welcome them onto our campus and incorporate them as part of what we do here at Endicott. And so that is how the single parent program at Endicott was founded back in the early 90s, and it was relaunched in 2004 as Keys to Degrees, Educating Two Generations Together. The program currently houses, as I said, 10 families, including one parent and one child, and we're actually in the process of phasing in space for another 10 families, so we're hoping to have 20 families over the next few years. We're proud to say that we've graduated 33 students over the years with bachelor's degrees. We have an 87% persistence rate, which is a statistical difference, but equivalent to what a lot of people call retention rates, freshman to sophomore enrollment. We have a 68% bachelor's degree completion rate over the past 10 years. The average completion time for a bachelor's degree is 4 years for students admitted as freshmen and 3 years for transfer students. When we put this into perspective, my friend Barbara over here has done some research at the Institute for Women's Policy Research on student parents in the national context. And unfortunately, the graduation rate for student parents overall for bachelor's degrees is less than 4%. So parents and their children live on campus year-round in a 4-bedroom suite in a traditional dormitory with a college roommate who is another single parent and their child. And that is something that we consider very important to the social capital development that people do in college, and definitely comes along with all of the roommate drama of a college roommate, and then some. And one of the first places that we built partnerships working outward as a higher education institution was with our local childcare providers. And those providers really are providing the second generation component of the program. We currently partner with 4 local early childhood centers and the on-site after-school program at the local elementary school for the children that have reached kindergarten age. The college partially subsidizes childcare costs until the student receives a state childcare voucher. In addition to these resources, Keys to Degrees at Endicott includes a full tuition scholarship, year-round housing, student support services, curricular activities, community engagement expectations, and 3 internships in the student's chosen major, including a full-time, full-semester internship in their senior year of college that often leads directly into an employment offer. Students are also eligible to receive in-kind services. We have work-study babysitters that provide sick care and babysitting in the evenings so that students can participate in campus activities. We have also the children eat for free in the cafeteria with their parents, and their parents all have a modest meal plan as well as their kitchen in their suite. Based on the success of the program, Endicott became interested in scaling up and expanding to other colleges and universities. And this started in 2010 with the program, the Keys to Degrees program at Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti, and soon thereafter expanded to Ferris State University in Big Rapids, Michigan, which is a very small town if anyone is familiar with Western Michigan. Most recently, we've also expanded and have a new program called Keys to Success at Dillard University in New Orleans. Honestly, these partnerships begin in the strangest of places. The partnership that we have with Dillard University happened out of the coincidental seating of Endicott's president, Dick Wiley, next to the president of Dillard University on an airplane. So, you know, I think that the lesson there is just to always be on the lookout for new opportunities to partner. 2 years later, Dillard's program is off the ground and moving forward towards a goal of 25 students enrolled by fall 2015. So one of the things we've learned in our process is to count our blessings at Endicott. We happen to be at an institution that is very privileged to have a president who fully supports the program, and so we have the upper level administration on our side. We have institution with a strong endowment. We have a number of contributions that are made through local partnerships with the community to the program. And so when we went out and started doing this partnership work at institutions like Dillard and Eastern Michigan University, a historically black university and a public state university, one of the things that we learned is that not everyone has the same privileges that we have at Endicott, and so how do we adapt? And so one of the things that immediately came to mind in each of the replication sites is the partnerships with Head Start. And one of the things, I guess, partnerships with Head Start can happen in two types of ways. At Eastern Michigan University, there happens to be an existing Head Start center right near campus. And so there also happens to be an on-campus childcare center, which is phenomenal, but also expensive for many of the families that are enrolled in the Keys to Degrees program. And unfortunately, the student discount is only $5 a month. So the family said, I can't afford to send my child there, and the program said, well, then we have to find an option that will work. And so the program director of Keys to Degrees at EMU partnered with the Head Start program in order to be able to help those families get into the program. Another type of Head Start partnership is given in the example at Ferris State University, where they actually have a Head Start classroom in their campus childcare center. And for students, that Head Start classroom is a full day Head Start classroom. They also have a partial day classroom for community members that are not enrolled in college. And in the other side of the center, we have, there is another for-pay side that also provides student childcare through funding through the C-Campus program. So if you're not familiar with C-Campus, childcare access means parents in schools is a federal childcare grant promoting childcare on campus. And there are really interesting possibilities that have come out of partnerships between higher education institutions and childcare or Head Start through the C-Campus program. One example came from the University of Oregon, where I actually was a student parent myself, and I realized as I was sitting here this morning that I'm a former Head Start parent. But I didn't even realize it because my kids went to the campus childcare center, and they were enrolled side by side with other families that from the community, or faculty and staff families or student families. But we also received the services of an in-home visitor who would come and make sure that everything else was going okay for us. And so there's a lot of different places. I think that those types of partnerships between colleges and Head Start really make a lot of sense. So at the same time that our Keys replication efforts were getting off the ground, Dick Wiley, our president, was nominated as an Ascend Fellow with the Aspen Institute, and it was there that he met Gloria Perez, the executive director of the Jeremiah program based in Minneapolis-St. Paul. Now, Jeremiah program is not a higher education institution. They're a nonprofit organization that provides housing and childcare on site for residents who are enrolled in post-secondary education. And so together, we decided to put our heads together and figure out, well, what could we do in Boston? There are a lot of different new challenges that neither of us had really overcome yet in that kind of a scenario, in terms of working with English language learners, in terms of working with an urban population in a context where you can't just, we're not in Fargo, North Dakota, you can't just go buy a building without a pretty strong fundraising campaign that may take many years, and we have students that need help now. And so we've, in this past year, have partnered and collaborated to launch the Jeremiah Endicott program in Boston. In this program, we have 15 single-parent students and their children who are enrolled in an associate's program, and most of the students are very similar demographically to community college students, And Endicott Boston is not part of, it's part of the Van Loan School for Graduate and Professional Studies, and so there's a different tuition structure. It's very comparable to the state community college system, and many students actually opt into coming to Endicott over going to the local community colleges because as immigrants, they're classified as international students and would have to pay international student tuition rates at public institutions. Let's see. So I'm just kind of trying to fast forward it a little forward and just let you know that, I think that in all these different ways, that we're working on building partnerships, that we started with 10 students at a small 4-year liberal arts college, and we're now through our partnerships with a national network of colleges and universities, nonprofits, and also early childhood providers. We're now reaching an impact where we're impacting thousands of families and lives. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. CFED is really excited to engage in a partnership with the National Head Start Association, who has just joined our Assets and Opportunity Network as an allied organization. And our president, Andrea Lavier, is an Ascend Fellow, so we've been working diligently on two-generation approaches for a while now. And in the context of two-generation, what CFED really focuses very squarely on is this issue of financial security for families, something that I know is squarely part of Head Start's parent, family, and community engagement strategy. And I want to talk for just a minute to kind of paint the picture for why this is so critical. I think a lot of the stories and things that we've been talking about today really have had a big focus on education and employment for families. And we will argue that those are absolutely critical issues. I really loved the way that Rico painted that as the job being kind of the ultimate social service. But I want to talk a little bit about financial management, how people manage the sort of cash inflows and outflows of their daily lives. Every year, CFED publishes something called an Assets and Opportunity Scorecard, which paints a picture of what's happening in terms of families' cash flows and balance sheets. The 2015 edition is being released on Thursday, if you're interested, but the 2014 statistics for now. 44% of families in America don't have 3 months' worth of savings that they could rely on in case of an emergency. 44%. That includes 4/5 of families in the lowest income levels, the families served by Head Start. So what do you do when there's an emergency, when the car breaks down, when you've got a big health care expense? Or even, as we learned when we did some research with families working with a local community action agency in St. Louis, that they categorized an emergency as the month when you didn't get as many hours at your job as you thought you did, and so you couldn't pay for groceries that month. What happens when that kind of emergency hits? Well, 56% of consumers have a subprime credit score, which means that they can't or have a very difficult time accessing the types of mainstream finances you or I might depend on. A credit card, they're going to pay more for that if they can get it at all. Or they're going to go to check cashers and payday lenders. On average, families that rely on alternative financial services spend over $2,400 a year in fees. That's a story of stress. That's an enormous amount of stress on a household to be managing what are essentially sort of lumpy income in terms of you don't always get the same number of hours at your job every month, and what you have to put out every month in order to feed your family and have a roof over your head. We've also gained an understanding of what happens when you start to work on these financial security issues for households, what happens overall. We found that families that do have savings are more likely to move out of poverty. So in a study that was released a couple of years ago, they found that among adults in the bottom income quartile, again, people that we all know and work with, 34% of those that had a low amount of initial savings left that bottom quartile 15 years later, but 55% of those that had savings were able to leave poverty over that same period. We've also done some work on something that we call children's savings accounts. Those are accounts that are opened in the name of the child, and they're earmarked for use in a post-secondary, sort of after they graduate from college, often for post-secondary education. And we've implemented those projects in Head Start settings, in preschools, when children are starting kindergarten at a variety of ages. But what we found is that, regardless of the income of the household, children with $500 or less earmarked for post-secondary education, we all know $500 isn't going to pay for college, they are 3 times more likely to enroll in college, and they're 4 times more likely to graduate. And we're also seeing evidence that those children have better socio-emotional development indicators. Just a little bit of savings earmark that says you have a future. And lastly, as we think about employment pathways and really thinking about employment, we've also been doing a lot of partnership work with workforce development programs to intersect what happens when you start to deal with some of these financial management issues. And we found that if you're working on employment issues at the same time as you're working on financial issues and helping to set and achieve financial goals, those families have higher job placement, they have higher retention in those jobs, and a year later, after achieving those financial goals, they're earning a higher average salary. So focusing on those financial management issues is critically important alongside all of these other pieces that we're facing. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of some of the things that we've seen in terms of how organizations have been doing this. And at CFED, as I said, we've partnered both in terms of establishing matched savings accounts products, but also looking at a panoply of other types of strategies that help families to ultimately change their financial behavior over time. And we've worked with Head Start agencies in as diverse of places as Bakersfield, California, all the way to Scranton, Pennsylvania, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Dallas, parts of Michigan and Kentucky. So we've really enjoyed partnering with the Head Start community. One of the things that we found is that when Head Start agencies sort of sit down and start to look at this very critically and think strategically about the financial management, how they're going to approach that with households, that the first thing they actually do is start approaching that with staff and making sure that staff feel much more comfortable talking about and engaging in a conversation about financial topics with families. We're not saying that these staff need to be experts in financial topics by any means, but simply that they be given a set of tools and resources to be able to do that. Recently, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, has launched a new resource that is designated, really designed for working with social service workers, frontline staff, called Your Money, Your Goals. And I know that a number of Head Start agencies are starting to, it's a free resource available at consumerfinance.gov that I think can work powerfully in terms of helping to introduce some of those key concepts with staff. In one of the sites that we worked at, they even started including financial development training as part of the staff professional development goals. We do know that partnership with community organizations is critical, again, because it's not necessarily something that you're going to create the capacity to do in-house. There are organizations, I'm sure, in most of your communities that will do these types of programs. We've seen partnerships with Goodwill Industries, with local YMCA or YWCAs, with local credit counseling agencies. Often community action agencies are already doing financial education workshops and match savings accounts in other parts of the organization. Certainly hosting VITA or volunteer income tax assistance programs is one way to start those programs. And often local credit unions and banks will want to step up to the plate and do those types of things as well. I'm going to talk about financial education workshops in a minute, but before I get there, the other thing that we've seen actually is some really interesting collaborations where the local Head Start Association or other type of intermediary group is providing valuable resources in a community. We worked with the Kansas Head Start Association, and they have done, first they've done what they call a curriculum crosswalk, where they've took all of the available financial education curriculum and did sort of a crosswise comparison of what they had to offer, because they found that Head Start agencies were really kind of confused. There's a lot of financial education curriculum out there, and so they tried to sort of suss through all of that and talk about what the advantages and disadvantages of each programs were. So that's on the Kansas Head Start Association's website. They also do a poverty education session for the banking community. Anybody who wants from the banking community who wants to come in and volunteer at the Head Start site has to go through that poverty education session to help them to better relate with Head Start families. But it also is helping them to create wider conversations in the community about local poverty issues. And in another example, the United Way of St. Louis, which works, I think, with 5 Head Start sites or Head Start programs in the St. Louis area, they've actually created a financial capability survey instrument that the local Head Start sites are using with their families to help kind of diagnose and look at particular services that can be provided. So what is it that can be done? And I think that often the default really is to go to financial education workshops. And I want to caution you about this, because what we've learned is that that can have very little impact. Let me give you an analogy. I could put up a slide and ask all of you to stand up and clap your hands over your head and jump with your feet apart and come back and do that again. I could teach you how to do the perfect jumping jack. It would be a thing of beauty. And if this were a financial education workshop, I would then extrapolate outwards and expect to come back a year later to see that you've all lost 10 pounds because you've all been doing your jumping jacks every day, right? It's very difficult to change behaviors, and particularly when it comes to financial behaviors that are ingrained often very early on in childhood. And this is where it's often, I think, a really important thing to be talking about in a Head Start context, because you can create a conversation within families about finances and how we manage them. And what happens when we go to the grocery store with a list versus not a list, and what we can afford to buy. Create something that's very powerful that often is missing when you're just doing a PowerPoint presentation about what banking is and how you sign up for a checking account. What we know is that for financial education workshops to have impact, to actually change financial behavior, that you have to make it relevant. There has to be something actionable. That if you're teaching people that they should be saving, that they should be able to sign up for a savings account on the spot. That if we're helping people to get into jobs, that we should be signing them up for direct deposit, that they can split part of their deposit into a savings account on the spot. That to make it really hard for them to not do the things that you're asking them to do from a financial management perspective. And so as you think about these partnerships and what is out there in the community, don't just say yes to the banker who wants to come and give you a financial education workshop. Make sure that that banker's coming with a bank account, that they're going to be able to sign people up on the spot, and that they're going to do more than just give you a PowerPoint presentation. So that's my soapbox about financial education. The other thing that we've learned is about coaching and mentoring, and we've heard so much today, I think, really powerfully about the role of mentors and coaches, and we're actually seeing that in the financial world as well. That when you engage as a financial coach and you're helping someone to set a financial goal and coaching them through achieving that, you're having much greater impact in terms of a change in financial behavior than you are, again, by just sort of having someone sign up for an account. And so we've also seen in some other workforce development programs that they're actually taking a job coaching approach and combining that with financial education. So job coaches are no longer siloed from financial coaches. It's actually the same job in the one and same place. And so I would encourage you also, as you think about some of the employment work that you'll do, as you're engaging in coaching and mentoring, what's the financial aspect of that you can start to add alongside? So I'll end there. Happy to talk about that later.
Yeah, I'll have to take financial management lessons, not to shop, just, so I'll need that too. So I'd like to talk about partnerships and how we build partnerships in our Head Start community. I think one of the most important things for partnership is just really making it part of our vision, that we partner to serve families. And then just getting not only ourselves excited, also all our staff excited about it, because we all become ambassadors for that partnership. And then the other thing, because a lot of people are, scared or suspicious about partnerships, is just to really trust there's no such thing as a bad partnership. Whatever you bring to the table is good and enough, and even if you are the one who's bringing more, because a lot of times, partners would say, communities would say, well, if I'm putting in 50%, then she's got to put in 50%. So those kinds of discussions happen a lot. And I say to Head Start programs that want to partner, it's okay if you bring in 70% towards that partnership, because you would be doing 100% by yourself otherwise. So for me, I always think of that when I think of partnerships. And so that's how I approach all the partners that I or my program have been able to build. And then the other thing that I think is important when talking about partnerships, a lot of times people say, well, Head Start paperwork, Head Start performance standards, they don't allow us to do this, they don't allow us to do that. But there's so much local design that is allowable in Head Start. So just look at that. For instance, our partnership with Mothers Club, we serve early Head Start children part day, and but for about 248 days, but it's a part day program. So a lot of people say to me, how can you do part day for early Head Start? Well, the performance standards do not say you have to serve full day early Head Start. They just say how long you have to serve early Head Start. And then it is the local design because the parents are there. So I was able to convince our regional office we can do this, and so we've been doing this. And then the other thing about partnerships is, when trying to build partnerships with, let's say, some of the community colleges or some of the private preschools, it's really funny what triggers the partnership. For instance, with one organization, I've been negotiating and talking, and the complicated stuff in terms of adult-child ratio, which is very small for Head Start, and some of the private preschools, that's not the case. And then what really, really got us to partner was the director was frustrated. She couldn't get a laptop from the university because it takes so much bureaucracy to do these kinds of things, or to change the carpet in the classroom, in the early Head Start, not early Head Start, in her preschool classroom. And I said, the day we sign the partnership, I'll get you a laptop, I'll get you the carpet, because we can do that. We are a federal to local program. We have the funding for these things. They are part of, what's in our budget, so we can do that. And so they notice how easy it is, to have access to things like that in Head Start. So that's one of the things that we were able to do. The other thing is the nutrition program, that we, all Head Start programs, we have to work with CACFP. And so we do that for them, and because a lot of the smaller preschools or the smaller schools, that's a lot of work for them to do. And when we say, we have the contract, we'll take care of that, and including whatever else we bring to you, be it comprehensive services, be it the family service worker that comes, we will take care of this part for you. So they really like that. And then not only do they like that, and then what happens with that is we even make a little money off of that, because they charge their other parents money for food, for lunch. And so for us, we still make a little bit off of that, so which helps us augment whatever programming we're doing. So that across the board has been really, really one of the attractive things that a Head Start program can bring into a partnership. So it's almost one of the first things we talk about when we want to partner. We'll do this, we'll do that, and we can do your food program for you. And then the other added benefit of the food program, I must say, is that how it changes the perception of families. And when we do a partnership with some of these private preschools, we don't have separate classrooms or children. They're all together. All our children are together. And so, they all eat family style, and they all eat the same food. So what ended up happening was kids who wouldn't touch, broccoli or green stuff, now they're eating it. The parents are seeing that their children are really eating these foods. And then they're learning to eat new kinds of foods. They're eating hummus. They're eating quinoa, which, Head Start kids eat quinoa. Yeah, well, in California, we do all kinds of things. So, in our nutrition program. So they're liking that. Parents are saying, we like the Head Start food. And so that really creates a respect for this low-income program in otherwise, maybe, an affluent environment which probably thinks, these kids are just taking and benefiting, but their kids are benefiting. And then we see really great relationships. For instance, in one of these private preschools where we have this partnership, this little, Head Start kid and another kid, they were just best friends. So, they played together. They had birthday parties, celebrations. The Head Start mom would take her to the park. The other one would take her to her home. But, that was a really close relationship that was being developed between the children and the mothers. So at one point, the Head Start mother got evicted. And this other mother, who was an attorney, she litigated for her and made sure that she was not evicted out of her home. So these wonderful types of social relationships are also being developed. And I just think that also, because I'm always an advocate when I look at these things, I'm thinking we're winning friends for Head Start. We're winning friends for what it is that we do. So those are some of the things that I think makes a partnership or easy, accessible, and doable. And okay, so then I just want to talk a little bit about barriers. I mean, there are a lot of barriers to partnerships. I was envious someone said that they had a really wonderful relationship with their school districts. Oh no, it took you, what, a long time, or 32 years, somebody said 32 years to set up the partnership, and they have those partnerships. Well, we are having some struggles, but we're not having these barriers with the teachers, with the principals of the schools. So we try to develop those relationships with them, to start to work with them, and so that we can maybe at some point have those relationships with the school districts. And now, with this new climate in Head Start, with the way this early Head Start childcare expansion is being rolled out, all kinds of different antagonistic relationships are cropping up all over Head Start because people are going into people's zip codes, and so that's also creating some barriers with Head Start programs amongst each other. And I'm thinking that's also a place where we could look at opportunities to partner. If you are the local early Head Start program, and then there's this, or the local Head Start, and then there's new early Head Start coming in, or vice versa, the only way to really be able to resolve some of these issues is just through partnership and partnering. So, I'm done.
I would like to say thanks for the opportunity again, and one of the first things that I would like to leave you with is the fact that people like change, but they don't like to change. And one thing I've learned in my years of working in Head Start is the fact that we often find people can come up with all ideas, but I learned something a few years ago, quite a few years ago, that poverty does rob America. But when organizations communicate, coordinate, collaborate, and work together, progress can happen. And I'm a living witness that it can happen. Progress can happen if you get people to believe in that progress is going to be beneficial for them. So when we come to partnerships, one of the first things we also do in our agency is we get the staff, the participants of the program, to sign what is called a compassionate partnership agreement. They have to sign that agreement. That agreement spells out specifically what the agency is going to do and what we expect them to do. And we hold them to that. And anytime they fade from that, we have some problems with them. And we have some serious problems because we are investing our time and money that we have secured from partners to be engaged in trying to lift them to another level of poverty. This partnership talks about what they're going to gain, what they are going to gain if they participate in the program, and what we are obligated to do. And it does work, ladies and gentlemen. The other thing that we have partners with, as I said this morning, is the fact that with 2 foundations, local bank, now we have 2 banks. We have one private citizen who's wealthy, and he's come aboard very well as a very good partner, and I applaud him very much so. It took me a while to convince him. I don't mean I had to do it, but I found the participants doing it. Get some of the participants that you have in your program or in your programs to sell for you, and they can sell better than you because they figure that you doing it only because you're getting you employed and you're getting a salary. But a participant talking about what it has done for them is better from my experience to another individual. And I heard someone mention, and I'm not being critical of that, but when you talk about partnership, if Nike continues to advertise and they sell all kind of shoes, right? Why can't we market the same way? Why can't we continue to upgrade our marketing strategy or go out and get someone who's in the marketing business and be your partner and let them know that you will recognize them? That's what we tried, and it worked. We have a outstanding market person. They don't want any money because all Head Start programs have to generate in-kind. So this person does this for in-kind. He does it for support of the agency, but we also give him a receipt showing that his credit can be credited for whatever he is doing. And he assists us in creating marketing strategies for the media and also for, which is be the media, the TV and radio and all kind of ads that we get in the paper, local paper, doesn't cost us anything. I don't even have the intelligence. I'm not there, I'm country, so I don't worry about it. This person is trained to do that, and it makes it work. The other thing that I would like to suggest to you to think about in terms of reminding you that many programs that we have in the country does do specific things for people. But when you think about a holistic approach, as I saw someone demonstrating today, holistic approach, you're talking about the total family. You're talking about the total family. And that is whether the child is there or whether the parent is there, but also some of the people, the children that's in the home that may be not in Head Start. We tend to include them in our relationship, and I tried to make sure that we send them a partnering letter. Every month they get a letter from me saying, whatever you need, I'll do anything I can but provide you with money. I don't have any money, so I can't do that. And they like that because they like the contact that someone has thought enough of them. And we talk about partnerships, it renders that way. When you also talk about partnerships, I like to suggest that you think about developing a partnership relationship with various agencies in terms of employment agencies. Employment agencies can come into your organization and assist your staff in filling out the participants, fill out an application. You may think the person can automatically do that. You may have a staff person do that, but that's not so. They may have a little edge. 2 factories volunteered to let us come in as an agent. As I said this morning, Nissan company came and taught us how and who they were looking for, what kind of employee, how to fill out the application so there'd be no niche when a person is trying to fill it out. And as a result of that, 45 employees, participants got employed by Nissan and doing well, right now. And that's very encouraging. Now you have to recognize Nissan too. They don't like a lot of publicity, but you have to get them over to your agency every once in a while and show them appreciation. That's a partnership award that you give that organization for them participating with your organization. The other thing I like is workforce training agencies. So you won't have to conflict with other agencies that's in your community. Everybody's trying to do something. Everybody's trying to get recognized. But surely, if you know the agencies that's in your community and you say, look, we can do this better by working together. I can't do what you are doing. I don't want to do what you're doing. I don't want to duplicate. But if you would come and partner with us, we can advertise in the local community that we are working together. And that's make things, because there were many years we tried to work solo, but you can't do it. You can't do it. It's just if you have a found formula for making it work, I sure would like for you to call me, because I sure have been trying to make sure. I like to work with people. Working together, you can make a difference. The other, as I said this morning, community colleges. All the local community colleges know in Mississippi, know who I am, because I was a football coach. I was an official. I was an official for 35 years calling basketball and football games, so they know me. They done cussed me out on the sideline and everywhere else. That's all right. When I go to them and ask them for some assistance, they're willing to do that. They don't worry about that. Cussing you out not gonna hurt you any. They in the stands and I'm on the floor getting paid. So I don't worry about it. And one thing I learned years ago, and make a long story short and I'll be through, is that you can't say anything, and the coach can't say anything but 2 times, and then you run him. So he can't cuss you out but twice, and then you're gonna run him off the floor. The last thing I like to say, and keep in mind, is banks, your partnerships with your local banks and your local private for-profit organizations. They are there. They are looking for someone to contact, and you just have to find the formula. And it always may not be you. It may be someone else in your organization that has contact with that person or that person there. That's the person that you need to rely on.
Questions? Oh, I'm going to turn my mic on again. Questions? Long day?
Yes.
All right. Well, I know that we've given you a lot to think about, and one thing that I want to note is that, as Kate pointed out so well about financial education, we also don't believe that just telling you this once will be enough to change everything that you've ever thought about Head Start. We hope it won't. We hope that you have the conviction of your experience. But what we plan to do, I think you've seen it on some of the rolling slides, is that we'll be having a webinar series over the course of the year. We'll have the video from today's event that will be up on the NHSA website and our YouTube channel. We're also starting a learning network, a listserv for anyone who's an NHSA member who's interested. Is anyone here part of our home visiting network or our DRS network or Early Head Start Childcare Partnerships Network? I see some hands. I love running these groups because it's wonderful to see you all help one another and talk to one another. And that's the kind of conversation that we're excited to get started about the 2-generation work, both with our expert programs that we've heard from today, with all of you who are interested in doing more of this or have something underway already that you want to share. We really look forward to continuing that conversation once you go home. I'll also note to what Kate was sharing, in your green folders, in your folders for the conference overall, you'll see one of our recent research blasts, which includes a bunch of different resources about resources for helping students and also, the parents in your program and also your staff with financial literacy and financial education. And with that, I will ask, do any of you have final comments? Yes.
Yeah, my final comment is you. I mean, you've been so wonderful, and thank you for arranging this and all the work that you've been doing in the background. It's just phenomenal how much you've been doing. Thank you very much.
And I would like to make a final comment. If any of you ever are in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi, please give me a call. I'll put you up one night, but I won't feed you.
All right, and I do want us to take a moment to thank our partners at the Aspen Institute. I know we've still got a few of them left over here. Really want to thank them for their support and their partnership and their continued investment in all of our children and our communities. All right, and thank you to the panel.